Welcome back to Chrono Tales, where the past refuses to stay buried. I'm your host, and tonight's story will make you think twice about what might be lurking in the forgotten spaces above your head. This is the chilling tale of Shadows in the Attic. They say that every old house has secrets, but some secrets have teeth. Some secrets have eyes that watch from the darkness above, and some secrets should never be disturbed. Emma Hartwell never expected to inherit anything from her great-aunt Cordelia. The two had never been close. In fact, Emma had only met the elderly woman twice in her 30 years of life. So when the lawyer called in October of 2019 to inform her that she was now the owner of a Victorian house in Salem, Massachusetts, Emma's first instinct was to sell it immediately.
Miss Hartwell, I should mention that your great-aunt left specific instructions. She wanted you to spend at least one night in the house before making any decisions about its future.
That's odd. Did she say why?
The letter she left mentioned something about understanding the responsibility that comes with the inheritance. I have it here, if you'd like me to read it.
Emma listened as Mr. Stevens read Cordelia's letter, written in the shaky handwriting of a woman who knew her time was running short.
My dear Emma, the house on Willowbrook Street has been in our family for over a century. It has seen births and deaths, joy and sorrow, love and other things. Before you decide its fate, you must understand what you're inheriting. Spend one night there. Listen to what the house tells you. Only then will you know what must be done. The key is under the third loose brick on the front steps. Use it wisely.
Mr. Stevens was my great-aunt. Was she suffering from dementia? This sounds like the ramblings of someone who wasn't entirely present.
On the contrary, Miss Hartwell, your great-aunt was sharp as a tack right up until the end. She was quite insistent about these instructions.
Three days later, Emma drove from her apartment in Boston to Salem, Massachusetts. The October sky was the color of old pewter, and the trees lining the highway blazed with autumn colors that reminded her of fire. She had packed a sleeping bag, some basic supplies, and enough skepticism to power a small city. (1347) Willowbrook Street was exactly what Emma had expected. A tall, narrow Victorian house painted in faded yellow with dark green shutters. It looked tired, like an old woman who had seen too much and was ready to rest. The front garden was overgrown, and several of the upstairs windows were boarded up. Emma found the loose brick exactly where Cordelia had said it would be. The key was old-fashioned, made of iron that had begun to rust around the edges. As she slid it into the front door lock, she could have sworn she heard something moving around inside the house. The interior of the house was surprisingly well preserved. Dust motes danced in the afternoon sunlight that streamed through tall windows, and the air smelled of old wood, lavender, And something else. Something Emma couldn't quite identify. Emma spent the first hour exploring the ground floor. The living room was filled with antique furniture covered in white sheets, like ghosts waiting for a seance. The kitchen was from the 1950s, complete with a Frigidaire that hummed like a sleeping giant. But it was when she reached the staircase leading to the second floor that Emma first felt the sensation of being watched. She turned around, expecting to see a neighbor peering through a window or perhaps a cat that had wandered in through an open door. But the house was empty, silent except for the sound of her own breathing and the settling of old wood. Emma froze. The sound had come from directly above her head. Someone, or something, was walking around on the second floor.
Hello? Is someone there?
Emma waited for an answer, but none came. After 5 minutes of silence, she convinced herself that the sound was just the house settling. Old houses made all sorts of noises, didn't they? The second floor contained 4 bedrooms and a bathroom that belonged in a museum. Each room was filled with the detritus of a long life, photographs in silver frames, books with yellowed pages, clothes that smelled of mothballs and memories. But what caught Emma's attention was the narrow door at the end of the hallway. The door was locked, but Emma could see light coming from underneath it. Daylight, which meant there was a window in whatever room lay beyond. This had to be the entrance to the attic. None of the keys on Cordelia's ring fit the attic door. Emma made a mental note to ask Mr. Stevens about it when she called him tomorrow. For now, she had enough to explore on the first 2 floors. As evening approached, Emma set up her sleeping bag in the living room. She had brought a small camping stove and made herself a simple dinner of soup and crackers. Outside, the October wind was picking up, rattling the windows and making the house creak like an old ship in a storm. At exactly 9:47 p.m., Emma heard the footsteps again. This time they were coming from directly above the living room. Slow, deliberate steps, as if someone was pacing back and forth.
Hello? I know someone's up there.
Emma grabbed a flashlight from her bag and headed for the stairs. She was done being afraid of sounds in an old house. If someone was squatting in Cordelia's attic, she was going to find out who. The second floor was dark, illuminated only by Emma's flashlight beam. She checked each room methodically, the master bedroom, the guest rooms, the bathroom, all empty, all undisturbed. But when she reached the locked attic door, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Light was no longer coming from underneath the door. In fact, the crack beneath the door was completely black, as if something on the other side was blocking the light. Emma knelt down and put her eye to the keyhole. She could see nothing but darkness. But she could hear something, a rustling sound, like fabric being moved around or papers being shuffled. And then, without warning, something on the other side of the door moved across the keyhole. Emma jerked backward, her flashlight clattering to the floor. In the darkness, Emma heard a sound that would haunt her for the rest of her life. It was laughter, soft, feminine laughter that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Emma ran. She grabbed her flashlight and ran down the stairs, through the living room, and out the front door into the October night. She sat in her car for 20 minutes, engine running, trying to decide whether to drive back to Boston or check into a motel. But Cordelia's words echoed in her mind. Spend one night there. Listen to what the house tells you. Emma had never been one to back down from a challenge. And she wasn't about to start now. She went back inside, locked the front door behind her, and set up her sleeping bag again. This time she placed a chair against the living room door and kept her flashlight within, arm's reach. Emma lay awake until nearly midnight, listening to the sounds of the old house. Every creak made her tense. Every gust of wind made her grip her flashlight tighter. But gradually, exhaustion overtook fear, and she drifted off to sleep. At 3:33 a.m., Emma woke to the sound of her own name being called.
Emma, Emma.
The voice was coming from above. Someone in the attic was calling her name. Emma lay perfectly still. Hoping that if she didn't respond, the voice would go away.
Emma, come up here.
The footsteps traced a path across the ceiling, from one end of the living room to the other, then back again. With each pass, the voice became clearer, more insistent.
Emma, I've been waiting for you.
Against every instinct screaming at her to stay put, Emma stood up. She had to know who was in the attic. She had to know why they knew her name. Emma climbed the stairs slowly, her flashlight beam dancing ahead of her. The house seemed to hold its breath as she approached the second floor. The footsteps overhead had stopped, but she could still hear the voice calling her name. When she reached the attic door, Emma was surprised to find it standing wide open. The darkness beyond was absolute, as if the flashlight beam was being absorbed by something on the other side.
Hello, who's there?
Come in, Emma. Come and see.
The voice belonged to a woman, elderly but strong. There was something familiar about it, though Emma couldn't place where she might have heard it before. The attic was larger than Emma had expected, running the entire length of the house. Her flashlight beam revealed a space filled with the accumulated memories of generations, trunks full of clothes, boxes of books, furniture covered in dust sheets, and dozens of framed photographs lining the walls. But what drew Emma's attention was the far end of the attic, where someone had arranged a small living space. There was a bed, a chair, a small table with a lamp, and shelves lined with books. It looked as if someone had been living up here.
Who are you? What are you doing in my great-aunt's house?
Your great-aunt's house? My dear child, this has been my house for longer than you've been alive.
Emma swung her flashlight toward the sound, but the beam revealed only an empty chair rocking gently back and forth.
Don't be afraid, Emma. I've been waiting so long to meet you. Come closer.
Every rational part of Emma's mind told her to run, to get out of the attic and out of the house. But there was something in the voice, a warmth, a familiarity that drew her forward. As Emma got closer, her flashlight beam illuminated the photographs on the nearby shelves. Most were old family portraits, stern-faced Victorians, children in sailor suits, couples on their wedding days. But one photograph made Emma stop dead in her tracks. The photograph showed two women standing in front of the very house Emma was now in. One was clearly Cordelia, but much younger, perhaps in her 20s. The other woman looked exactly like Emma. Same dark hair, same green eyes, same heart-shaped face. It was like looking at a photograph of herself. Except the clothing and hairstyle were from the 1950s.
That's impossible. Who is this woman?
That's me, dear. That's Margaret Hartwell, your great-grandmother.
Emma's great-grandmother had died when Emma was just a baby. She had no memories of the woman, and her parents rarely spoke of her. But the resemblance in the photograph was undeniable.
I've been waiting in this attic for 37 years, Emma. Waiting for someone who could see me, someone who could hear me. Cordelia could never see me, though she knew I was here. But you're different.
You're dead. This is impossible.
Dead? Yes, I suppose I am. But death isn't the end, child. Sometimes it's just a relocation.
Emma turned slowly, following the sound of the footsteps. Her flashlight beam swept across the attic, and for just a moment, she caught a glimpse of a translucent figure moving between the shadows. An elderly woman in a dress from the 1950s, with Emma's own face aged by decades.
Don't be frightened. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to warn you.
Warn me about what?
About the others, Emma. I'm not the only one who stayed behind.
The temperature in the attic dropped 20 degrees in seconds. Emma's breath came out in visible puffs, and frost began to form on the nearby surfaces.
They've been waiting longer than I have, Emma. Much longer. And they're not as friendly.
Who are they? What do they want?
The first was Silas Hartwell, who built this house in 1887. He was a cruel man, Emma. He beat his wife, terrorized his children, and when he died of a heart attack in this very attic, his anger kept him here.
Emma spun around, her flashlight beam searching for the source of the sound. In the far corner of the attic, she could see a large, dark shape moving among the stored furniture.
Then there's Eleanor, Silas's wife. She died in 1901, poisoned by her own hand to escape her husband's cruelty. She's been trapped here with him ever since, reliving her misery night after night.
The sound of a woman crying echoed through the attic, seeming to come from the walls themselves. It was a sound of absolute despair, of a soul that had given up all hope.
And there are others, children who died of disease, servants who were worked to death, family members who met unfortunate ends. This house has been collecting the dead for over a century.
Why are you telling me this? What do you want me to do?
The house needs to be cleansed, Emma. The spirits need to be released. But it can only be done by a blood relative, and it can only be done from the attic. That's why Cordelia left you the house. She knew you were the only one who could see us, the only one who could set us free.
Emma could feel them now, the other spirits. Drawn by her presence and her conversation with Margaret, they pressed in around her. Cold spots in the air, whispers in her ear, touches like ice water on her skin.
Another Hartwell woman, come to tell us what to do.
Help me. Please help me.
I want to go home. I want to see my mama. I want my
Make
dog.
him stop.
Free us.
Don't trust her.
Save me.
Emma was surrounded by voices now, dozens of them, all speaking at once. The temperature continued to drop, and her flashlight beam began to flicker as if the battery was dying.
Emma, you have to be strong. They're afraid of what you represent, the possibility of freedom. But some of them have been here so long, they've forgotten what it means to move on.
This is my house. I built it with my own hands. No one will drive me from it.
The attic erupted in chaos. Invisible hands threw boxes and furniture around the room. The temperature plummeted until Emma's breath formed thick clouds of vapor. Her flashlight flickered and died, plunging the attic into absolute darkness.
Stop it! All of you stop.
The chaos stopped as abruptly as it had begun. In the darkness, Emma could hear only her own rapid breathing and the sound of her heart pounding in her chest.
Well done, child. You have more strength than they expected.
Emma's flashlight came back on, revealing the attic in shambles. Boxes were overturned, furniture was scattered, and papers were strewn everywhere. But in the center of it all, Emma could now see them clearly. Dozens of translucent figures standing in a circle around her.
They're listening now, Emma. Tell them what you've decided.
I don't know what to decide. I don't understand any of this.
Look around you, child. Look at the photographs.
Emma walked to the scattered photographs, picking them up one by one. They showed the history of the house, family gatherings, birthdays, weddings, funerals. But in every photograph, Emma could now see them, the spirits, standing in the background, watching from doorways, looking out through windows, In a photograph from Christmas 1923, Eleanor stood behind the children, her face twisted with sorrow. In a wedding picture from 1956, Silas loomed in the corner, his expression dark with rage. They had been there all along, trapped and suffering, invisible to the living but unable to leave.
How do I free them?
There's a ritual. Emma, it's written in the journal, hidden beneath the floorboards, under that chair. Cordelia's grandmother wrote it down after consulting with a medium in 1934. But it requires a sacrifice.
What kind of sacrifice?
The house, Emma. The house must be destroyed.
Emma knelt beside the chair and pried up the loose floorboards with her bare hands. Beneath them was a small wooden box containing a leather-bound journal, its pages yellow with age. The journal belonged to Cordelia's grandmother, Abigail Hartwell. The handwriting was spidery and difficult to read, but Emma could make out enough to understand the ritual's requirements.
The spirits of the dead can only be released when their earthly anchor is destroyed. The house that binds them must be consumed by fire, and the flames must be lit by one of their own blood, speaking their names and granting them permission to depart.
It's the only way, Emma. The house is beautiful. I know, but it's become a prison. We've been trapped here for so long that some of us have forgotten what it means to be alive.
Emma looked around at the assembled spirits. Some appeared curious, others afraid. Silas stood apart from the group, his arms crossed, his expression defiant.
I won't be driven from my home by some girl who doesn't understand what she's dealing with.
Please, Silas, we've suffered enough. Let us find peace.
I want to see the light again. I want to feel warm. I agree.
Emma closed the journal and stood up. She looked at each spirit in turn, seeing not monsters but people, who had been trapped by circumstances beyond their control.
If I do this, if I burn down the house, will you all be free? All of you?
Yes, child. The fire will break the bonds that hold us here. We'll be able to move on to whatever comes next.
And what if there is nothing next? What if this is all there is?
Then we'll face that together, as a family should. But at least we'll be free to make that choice.
Emma thought about the house, its history, its beauty, its value. She thought about Cordelia, who had lived here for 70 years, unable to see the spirits but knowing they were there. She thought about all the Hartwells who had called this place home.
There's one condition. I'll perform the ritual, but first I want to know all of your stories. I want to understand who you were in life, not just who you became in death.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
For the next 2 hours, Emma listened as each spirit told their story. Silas had been cruel, yes, but he had also been a man broken by poverty and loss, who had never learned to express love except through control. Eleanor had been a gifted artist, whose creativity was stifled by the constraints of her time. The children had died too young to understand why they couldn't leave with their parents.
I used to believe life had a clear path until I lost my way.
Looking back, I realize
I'll be good this time, Mommy.
Each story was a tragedy in its own way, a life cut short or constrained by circumstances. But Emma began to understand that they weren't evil, they were simply lost.
Thank you for listening, Emma. No one has heard our stories in so long.
Everyone deserves to have their story told. Now let's get you all home.
Emma walked downstairs and gathered what she needed for the ritual: candles, matches, accelerant from the basement, and the journal. When she returned to the attic, all the spirits were waiting for her, standing in a circle around the small living area that Margaret had created.
According to the journal, I need to light the fire from the center of the house. Then speak each of your names as I give you permission to leave. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Absolutely. Let's do this!
Yes.
We're ready.
Emma lit the first candle and placed it on the small table in Margaret's living area. The flame flickered but held steady.
Silas Hartwell, you are free to go.
Silas's form began to shimmer and fade. For just a moment, his expression softened, and he looked like the man he might have been if life had been kinder to him.
Thank you, one granddaughter.
Eleanor Hartwell, you are free to go.
Bless you, child, bless you.
One by one, Emma spoke the names of every spirit in the attic. Some she knew from the journal. Others whispered their names to her as she called them forward. With each name, another soul found peace and faded into whatever lay beyond.
Thank you for everything. Goodbye.
No matter how far, you'll always be in my heart.
Bye-bye, Mommy. Don't forget me.
Finally, only Margaret remained.
It's beautiful, Emma. I can see it now. The light beyond. It's so warm, so welcoming.
Margaret Hartwell, my great-grandmother, you are free to go.
I love you, child. Take care of yourself.
Emma stood alone in the attic as the fire began to spread. She had poured the accelerant in a careful pattern, ensuring that the flames would consume the house completely, but give her time to escape. She walked slowly through the house one last time, saying goodbye to the memories contained within its walls. In the living room, she could almost see Cordelia reading by the fireplace. In the kitchen, she imagined Margaret cooking dinner for her family. In the bedroom, she pictured children playing and laughing. The house had been many things: a home, a prison, a repository of secrets. But now it would be something else. Entirely, a gateway to freedom for those who had been trapped within its walls. Emma stood in the front yard and watched the house burn. The flames were beautiful in the October night, dancing against the dark sky like spirits finally freed from their earthly bonds. The fire department arrived 20 minutes later, but there was nothing they could do. The house was too far gone, and Emma told them she had been staying there. When an electrical fire started in the attic, it wasn't entirely a lie. As dawn broke over Salem, Massachusetts, all that remained of 1347, Willowbrook Street was a pile of smoldering ash, and the memories of those who had called it home. Emma drove back to Boston that morning with a heart that felt both heavy and light. She had destroyed a beautiful house, but she had freed more than a dozen souls who had been trapped for decades. She had given them the one thing they needed most: permission to leave. 3 months later, Emma received a letter from the Salem Historical Society. They had been researching the fire at the Hartwell house and had discovered something interesting in their archives. According to records from the 1930s, psychic investigators had declared the house to be one of the most severely haunted locations in New England. The letter went on to say that, strangely, psychic investigators who had visited the site after the fire reported no supernatural activity whatsoever. It was as if the fire had cleansed the land completely. Emma smiled as she read those words. The land was clean now, ready for new life, new memories, new stories. And somewhere, in whatever realm waited beyond this one, Margaret and Eleanor and even angry Silas were finally at peace. Her phone rang as she finished reading the letter. The caller ID showed Mr. Stevens, the lawyer.
Miss Hartwell, I have some interesting news. Your great-aunt Cordelia left you something else in her will. Something she wanted you to have only after you had spent the night in the house on Willowbrook Street.
What is it?
Another house, Miss Hartwell. This one in Savannah, Georgia. And according to the previous owners, it also has some unique characteristics.
Mr. Stevens, does this house happen to have an attic?
Why, yes, Miss Hartwell. How did you know?
Emma looked out her window at the Boston skyline and smiled. Somewhere out there, other spirits were waiting for someone who could see them. Someone who could hear their stories. Someone who could set them free. 2 weeks later, Emma Hartwell was driving south toward Georgia. Her car packed with candles, matches, and a deep understanding of what it meant to inherit more than just property. And that concludes tonight's tale from Chrono Tales. Remember, the shadows in your attic might not be dust and darkness after all. Sometimes, they're just souls waiting for someone brave enough to listen to their stories, and strong enough to help them find their way home. Thank you for joining me in the darkness. Until next time, look up occasionally. You never know who might be watching from above.